We begin my top 28 remaining quarterback rankings. Please keep in mind there are two quarterbacks on bye, and then two are playing in the Thursday night game, and these rankings do not include Thursday night game players. With quarterbacks that I think are probably at best going to be low end QB2s, we have Will Levis, Aiden O'Connell, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, and Tyler Huntley. One fun fact: the last time Will Levis passed for over 100 passing yards was in week 3. He has since scored us negative points in fantasy in one game, missed another, and yeah, it's been an absolute disaster. I do think that he gets over 100 passing yards in this game against the Bills, and while it should theoretically be a plus matchup on paper, until we see anything remotely close to mediocre quarterback play, I think it's pretty tough to have him better than really the last quarterback in the NFL that you'd want to start. Aiden O'Connell is set to make his second start for the Raiders this season. He's coming off a game in which he did throw for over 250 yards and a touchdown, and so I do think he has a little bit more upside than Will Levis this week, despite drawing on paper a tougher matchup. And it's really a shame that they got rid of Davante Adams from his fantasy standpoint, and so I do think that limits his ceiling and lowers his floor as well. Russell Wilson is set to make his debut for the Steelers this week. It's unfortunate for him that he plays the Jets. His offensive line isn't very good, and he really doesn't have the rushing ability that Justin Fields does. And so I do think the offense as a whole is going to be much less effective this week. And I do think that he's in a void, but I do think he's going to get a good amount of volume, especially with Davante Adams likely to play a significant portion of snaps for the Jets. I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be trailing in this game. And so I think through sheer volume alone, he is a little bit better of a bet than Aiden O'Connell and Will Levis. And next we have Deshaun Watson playing against Cincy. He does have more rushing upside than any of the previous quarterbacks I've mentioned. However, they just got rid of Amari Cooper. And so that leaves him with David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy. We might get Nick Chubb back this week, so that could potentially help in terms of opening up things in the passing game. But whatever upside he already didn't possess, he possesses less now. Tyler Huntley draws the Indianapolis Colts this week. It's a very good matchup on paper. However, despite being in what should be an awesome situation in Miami, he's been relatively ineffective. However, in his debut for the Dolphins, he did have 40 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And so I do think that he possesses rushing upside. And with this being one of the best matchups that you can really draw, I do think that he has a little bit more upside than some of the players below him. Now we have quarterbacks that I think are probably low end QB2s, but do have more upside due to them having easy matchups. We have Matt Stafford and Justin Herbert. Matt Stafford has a possibility of getting Cooper Kupp back. This projection is without Kupp playing. He's coming off a bye week, so I do like his chances of at least getting us more than 10 points, but he's also only done so in 3 games so far. To a degree, I understand because he's been missing Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. However, he's only finished higher than the QB 22 in week 1 when he had Puka and Cooper Kupp for the game, and so I don't like his chances without Kupp playing. Last week, Justin Herbert had his highest QB finish. He was the QB 21 on the week. And so while this is an easy matchup against the Cardinals, Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman have just been running more. And so against the Cardinals, I think there's a good chance that they just continue to pound the rock and don't really give him the opportunity to be the elite quarterback that he actually is. And so for that reason, I have plenty of quarterbacks ranked ahead of him. But there is a chance, due to the fact that it is a really easy matchup, that he does outperform my QB 22 expectation. And now we have quarterbacks that I don't think are very good, but they do have rushing upside. We have Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. A-Rich draws the Miami Dolphins. I don't like the matchup for him. Besides week 1, he's been horrible for fantasy purposes. He does have a ton of rushing upside, and I think he finally gets a rushing touchdown. But I think through the air, he's incredibly ineffective. And he's a very risky play, but he still has a good amount of upside due to the rushing floor. He's been tackled multiple times inside the 5-yard line, and so his counting stats could have been a lot better for fantasy purposes if that hadn't been the case. But still, he's been a terrible quarterback in terms of real life and fantasy so far. And now we have Daniel Jones. He is playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. Middle of the road matchup. I think he throws a couple of interceptions. He's been very streaky so far. He's played pretty well for fantasy purposes in some games, multiple 2-touchdown, 0 interception games, but he's also been terrible in some of the games. And that's really been what we've seen throughout his career. And so I don't think he has the best game here, but His floor is a lot higher now that they have Malik Neighbors back. And now we have quarterbacks that I think are probably mid to high end QB2s this week. We have Andy Dalton, Kyler Murray, Drake May, A-Rod, and T-Law. Andy Dalton was fantastic in his first start. However, he's regressed basically every single week since then. It is a get-right matchup against the Commanders, but due to his lack of rushing upside, I do think there are quite a few players that I would rather have due to their potential ceiling being just a little bit higher. Kyler Murray draws the Chargers this week. There's the potential that he's without MHJ. I do think he finds Trey McBride early and often in this one, but I don't think he has the upside that I would normally project from him. I do think he finds Trey McBride early and often, and so I do think there are plenty of options that I'd rather have. Drake May was awesome in terms of fantasy purposes in his first game. He did have multiple turnovers, but the Jacksonville Jaguars are the perfect matchup. I do want to see a little bit more consistency from him before vaulting him too highly in the rankings, considering his situation really isn't that good. But it was very encouraging what we saw from him in his first start. Aaron Rodgers matches up against Pittsburgh here. With the addition of Davante Adams, I have him ranked higher than I would normally have him when he was facing off against TJ Watt, who in my opinion is the best edge defender in the NFL. I don't think he has the best game due to the fact that the Jets' offensive line really hasn't been the best in pass protection. He was getting smacked against the Bills. And so I don't think he has quite the game that some people might expect, but I do think that his floor is going to be raised with the addition of Davante Adams. T-Law is playing the Patriots this week. He's had a QB 10 finish sandwiched in between QB 16 finishes the past 3 weeks. And so I do think that he has a good floor due to sheer passing volume alone, but I don't think this is one of those ceiling games for T-Law. If you like what you've seen and heard so far, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Now we have quarterbacks that I think are probably high-end QB2s to potentially low-end QB1s. We have Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, and Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow is playing against Cleveland. The reason I don't have him ranked higher is because I don't expect them to really need to throw that much. I think they're going to absolutely dominate the Browns. He wasn't the best through the air last week, but he did set a career long with his rushing touchdown, and I definitely don't expect that to happen again. But he's a very good real-life quarterback, and if Cleveland is able to surprise me, maybe he needs to throw a little bit more, but I just don't project it in this one. Kirk Cousins is playing Seattle. He doesn't really have any rushing upside, but Seattle's a very good offense, and so he should have to throw a decent amount. The offense is starting to click a little bit more, and so he does possess a lot more upside recently than he showed really in the first part of the season. Sam Darnold is playing Detroit this week. It's a tough matchup on paper, but they did lose Aiden Hutchinson, and so I think that's really going to hurt their pass rush, giving Sam Darnold more time. I think that they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit to stay in this game with Detroit, and so I really like Sam Darnold this week. Patrick Mahomes is playing the San Francisco 49ers this week. While he hasn't been the quarterback in fantasy, at least, that we have come to know and love throughout his career, I do think he has to pass the ball quite a bit in this one, and so I do think he finishes much higher than the general QB 20-ish finishes we've been seeing from him. Now we have quarterbacks that I think are firmly QB1s, but I don't think are going to be top 5 options this week. We have Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, and CJ Stroud. Brock Purdy's playing against Kansas City. I think that he and Mahomes are going to have a QB duel in this one. I think they get a good amount of passing volume in this one, and I think the offense is going to be pretty efficient. Geno Smith is playing against the Falcons. There have been some misfires in certain weeks, but he's been very, very good when he's been good. This is a get-right matchup for him. I think he throws the ball quite a bit in this one, and I really like the passing volume overall due to the probable high-scoring game script here. Jared Goff is playing against the Vikings. It really isn't a great matchup, but Jared Goff has been awesome the past 2 games, and so I think he continues to be a must-start until he starts to cool off, which who knows if that's even going to happen. And with their defense losing Aiden Hutchinson, that is potentially going to make them have to score more points to stay in games. We'll have to see as to the effect per se that has in terms of their ability to stop people on defense. It's definitely going to hurt, but we'll have to see exactly how much of an effect that has. But once again, as far as he's concerned, he's been awesome the past 2 games. CJ Stroud is playing against Green Bay. He has a lot of upside. However, due to his lack of rushing upside, I do think there are a couple quarterbacks I'd rather have than him. But he should have to throw the ball a pretty good amount to stay in this game. I do think the effects of losing Nico Collins are going to bite him here, though. Although Tank Dell is certainly a great replacement. But overall, I really like CJ Stroud this week, despite it being a middle-of-the-road matchup. Now we have quarterbacks that I think are definite possibilities to finish as top 5 quarterbacks, with Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Jordan Love, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Jaden Daniels. Baker Mayfield has been balling recently. It's a plus matchup against Baltimore, who's been very streaky from game to game. I think we see a ton of passing volume. I think he's going to be quite efficient, and I think he has a pretty good day overall. Josh Allen, it's a very tough matchup against the Titans, but Josh Allen was awesome against the Jets. He gets Amari Cooper, and so we'll have to see as to the immediate effect of Amari Cooper being new in the offense, but he already had a ton of upside, and how could it possibly be any worse just also having Amari Cooper? And so overall, Josh Allen has tons of upside on the ground and through the air, and it's only going to get better from here with Amari Cooper. Jordan Love draws the Houston Texans this week. It's a plus matchup. I think he gets a good amount of passing volume, and I think he's very efficient overall with a couple of touchdowns. Lamar Jackson is playing Tampa Bay this week. It's a very good matchup for him. I expect Lamar and Baker Mayfield to be throwing the ball plenty, but I also expect Lamar Jackson to be running the ball. I think he gets a rushing touchdown in this game, and I think he has a ton of upside. Jalen Hurts is playing against the Giants this week. It's a great matchup for him. He finally has, with possibly the exception of Dallas Goedert, the full supporting cast of players around him once again. He always has the rushing floor. I think the offense is going to start to become a lot more efficient due to them actually having their playmakers on the outside. And so I really like Hurts this week. And at number 1, I have Jaden Daniels. I think he is going to go off against the Panthers. Caleb Williams just did recently. And so we've seen success basically every single week from Jaden Daniels. And while the fantasy finish wasn't quite as good against the Ravens, he was still really good in the game. He didn't turn the ball over. He didn't seem overwhelmed. And so I think that bodes well for him against the Panthers, who, while the Baltimore Ravens don't have a great defense particularly this year, or at least they're streaky, Carolina has just about the worst, if not the worst defense in the NFL. And so to review, quarterbacks that I think are probably at best going to be QB2s are Will Levis, Aiden O'Connell, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, and Tyler Huntley. Quarterbacks that I think are low in QB2s this week, but do have a little bit more upside due to them having advantageous matchups, are Matt Stafford and Justin Herbert. Quarterbacks with substantial rushing upside that just don't have the best matchups this week are Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Quarterbacks that I think are probably mid to high end QB2s, but I don't see finishing as QB1s this week are Andy Dalton, Kyler Murray, Drake May, Aaron Rodgers, and Trevor Lawrence. Quarterbacks that I think are probably high end QB2s to potentially low end QB1s are Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, and Patrick Mahomes. Quarterbacks that I think are probably mid to low end QB1s this week, but I don't think really are going to be top 5 options are Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, and CJ Stroud. And then quarterbacks that I think are definite candidates to be top 5 and could potentially be the QB1 overall this week are Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Jordan Love, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Jaden Daniels. All right, so that concludes my top 28 remaining QBs. Remember that this was not including Thursday night game players, as well as the 2 teams that were on bye this week. And so who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Let me know below in the comment section and let me know why. With that being said, if you like what you've seen and heard in this video, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.